Expanding into the European Amazon marketplaces sounds great until you run into VAT, Value Added Tax. In this video, you will learn the essential VAT requirements for sellers when you must register, how Amazon handles collection of VAT, how different fulfillment setups affect your obligations, and the full compliance process for each market in Amazon Europe. If you want expert help with the registrations and filings, reach out to SimplyVAT team, and you can find their link below in the description.
Hello, Alex. Welcome back to Klik YouTube channel to educate our Amazon sellers about important elements when it comes down to VAT and different things around it when they're selling on Amazon Marketplace. As always, let's first start with a short introduction of yourself and SimplyVAT before you go into the details.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me back, Lizette. My name is Alex. If you haven't seen my videos before, I talk all about taxes within the UK and EU, and really try to demystify it for Amazon sellers looking to expand internationally. SimplyVAT helps Amazon sellers and other e-commerce sellers with their international VAT compliance. So that could be registrations, ongoing VAT returns, and we really are there to kind of help people along the journey because we know sometimes it can be a bit daunting going into a new location with all the regulatory, responsibilities, but we're here to help.
Perfect. And I know you prepared some slides for us as well to go through the details, and so it would be easier to follow you. So you can go ahead, share your screen, and we are eager to learn from you because usually all the videos we have recorded with you are very interesting and useful for our sellers. So we're excited about this one as well.
Thanks so much. Okay, well, let's get into it. We have quite a lot of content. I'm going to be covering off both the UK and the EU. Okay, first off, I just really wanted to go into what is VAT. For those of you who may be listening, going, what is VAT? So VAT is a value-added tax. So it's a tax added into products and services, and it's used to collect revenue on behalf of end consumers towards the government. So it's not there to be a burden on businesses. So you are really just helping the governments collect the taxes, and you're able to reclaim any import taxes or purchase taxes or offset those on your VAT returns. So you're really just there to help collect it and be a revenue source for the different governments across the UK and EU. So where to tax and what to tax. So this is really kind of the root of everything that we need to understand. So first off, we need to ask, where is your business established? Is it established outside the EU or inside the EU? That's going to trigger different obligations and potentially different requirements when starting to register and report your taxes. The next thing is, who is the end customer? Is it going to be a business or is it going to be a private individual? Again, there's certain rules that will trigger different things. For today's purposes, we're going to just be talking about selling to end consumers, private individuals via marketplaces. Next, where are the goods going to be delivered from? So this is really looking at, are the goods delivered from within a fulfillment center within the UK or the EU, or are they being shipped from outside the UK and EU directly to customers in those relevant jurisdictions? So that's also an important question to ask, and we'll talk through why. And then finally, are the goods sold on a marketplace or your own website? So those things are going to trigger different rules and regulations as well. The ultimate thing that everyone needs to know is that you're going to tax at the rate where the end customer is located. So no matter where the goods are dispatched from, you're going to find the tax rate where the end consumer is and use that local tax rate when selling to your customers and including it in the prices. The VAT rates vary across the EU, and the standard rates vary between 17% and 27%. So it's quite a lot of fluctuation there. So again, you want to make sure that you're prepared depending on where your customer purchases from. They could purchase from a location that might have a low tax rate or a high tax rate, and you want to make sure that you're prepared to, cover those extra costs. So we're going to start with selling into the UK. When we're talking about selling into the UK, we're only going to be talking about non-UK sellers. So if you're a UK seller looking to sell on a UK marketplace, speak to a local accountant and they'll be able to help. This will be specifically for non-UK sellers, and there's going to be 3 different things that's going to trigger a UK VAT registration. So the first one is if you're importing or dispatching goods from a UK fulfillment center, like an Amazon fulfillment center. The second one is if you're selling on your own website to the UK customers from a fulfillment center outside the UK and the consignment value is less than £135. So in those cases, your very first transaction is going to be it's taxable, and you need to have a VAT registration in place right from that very first sale to a UK customer if the value of the goods is less than £135. And then the third option is if you're selling to UK customers from outside the UK with a consignment value of greater than £135 and you want to be the importer of record. And this is going to be super relevant for Amazon sellers, because if you are shipping goods into the UK and the consignment value is greater than £135, Amazon is really going to want you, the seller, to be the importer of record to cover or include those costs of VAT so that the customer doesn't see any difference when the goods are being imported. So just keep that in mind as well, that this could also mean that you should get a VAT registration in the UK. So looking at the marketplace rules when selling in the UK. So marketplaces in the UK are going to be taking on the responsibility for collection and remittance of the UK VAT for non-UK based businesses. So in this, we're talking about goods dispatched from within the UK to private consumers. So if you're using those Amazon fulfillment centers, and then also they're going to be covering the goods dispatched from outside the UK with a consignment value of less than £135. So sellers are going to be responsible for VAT, the collection and remittance to the tax authorities if the sales are made to VAT registered businesses in the UK. That is going to be the seller's obligation to charge and report that on your tax return. And then also if the goods are dispatched from outside the UK with consignment value of greater than £135. As I just mentioned, Amazon will most likely want you to cover the taxes in that. This does not mean that, the seller doesn't have an obligation. So really looking at for the goods being imported, if you're not holding stock, it doesn't always mean that you don't have an obligation. If Amazon is collecting the VAT on your behalf, that also doesn't mean you don't have an obligation to VAT register. You actually do. And what ends up happening is that in this slide, we're going to show you what happens. So first off, you, the seller, is going to be that underlying supplier. You're going to be making that B2C supply to the EU or to the UK customer rather. And this applies both to UK and EU. So the underlying supplier, you, the seller, is going to be making a deemed B2B supply to the electronic interface, which would be Amazon in this instance. And then Amazon is going to be making a sale to the end customer. So even though that you are not responsible to pay the tax over to the tax authorities, you are going to be declaring all of those transactions that you make from yourself over here to Amazon here as exempt of VAT, so that essentially the tax authorities can audit to ensure that Amazon has declared the VAT and you guys have actually made the sales. So it all equals out. So let's cover the VAT rates in the UK. There are 3 different types of rates in the UK. We have standard, we have reduced, and zero. So standard rates are 20%, and this covers pretty much all products within the UK. So if you're in doubt, always charge the standard VAT rate. Reduced rates cover things like safety gear, for example, helmets or children's car seats. Those sorts of things can be reduced rated. And then we also have a zero rate in the UK as well. Things like books and children's clothing where there won't be any taxes needing to be actually charged. Now, keep in mind that just because your product might be reduced or zero rated in the UK, once you start selling to different markets, that's not always going to be the case. You will want to make sure that you're checking the rates because each country has different classifications for each of their different products. So don't just assume that if you're zero rated in one country, that another country has a zero rate. Most countries don't actually have a zero rate. So make sure you're checking that out. So we're just going to recap all of this. So if you're fulfilling from within the UK, you're going to charge VAT on all of your products. Amazon is going to collect and remit the taxes from your sales to HMRC, to the local UK tax authority. And you, as the seller, are going to file a quarterly VAT return outlining all of your transactions made to Amazon, but there's going to be no VAT actually paid by you to HMRC. If you're fulfilling from outside the UK, we're going to determine what the consignment value of the goods are. So if it's less than £135, Amazon is going to be collecting the VAT and paying that over to the tax authorities on your behalf. So you need to make sure that you're collecting or charging the VAT or including it in the prices that you list on Amazon. If the goods are greater than £135 and the goods are coming from outside the UK to a customer within the UK, again, you need to decide who's going to be the importer of record. The importer of record is the one responsible for collecting and remitting the import VAT and duties. And Amazon really likes to prefer that, again, you, the seller, are that importer of record. So in that case, you need to collect the VAT and pay that over to HMRC directly. Amazon will not be intervening in those specific transactions. Now that we're talking about importing, I just really wanted to recap what you need to do when you're starting to sell and import into the UK. So first off, you're going to need a UK EORI number. This is going to identify you as the importer of the goods, and it will allow you to reclaim the goods on your VAT return. The UK has also introduced postponed VAT accounting to avoid paying import VAT as the goods clear through customs. So essentially, if you are VAT registered, you have an EORI number, and you're importing into the UK, you can use postponed VAT accounting, speak to your freight forwarder. And essentially, instead of paying the VAT up front, you will declare it on your VAT return as an input and output. So essentially, instead of paying it and reclaiming it, you're just saying that it's going to be marked as it's been paid and reclaimed already on your VAT return. So you don't need to worry. It's more of a paperwork kind of thing. You are going to want to make sure that you're using your EORI, all your import going into the fulfillment centers in the UK. And that's going to be really important, again, to make sure that you are recognized as the importer of record. And if you are reclaiming any of the VAT, in case there's an audit or anybody checks that VAT is being paid by you and it is marked from you. Any high value consignments are also going to have your EORI listed if you are going to be the importer of record, but you're going to need to decide who the importer of record is. If the end customer is going to be the importer of record, then they're going to be the ones listed as paying the import duties and taxes as the goods clear through customs. And what we've seen typically is a lot of customers don't like bearing that cost when they aren't clear that that cost is going to be a burden to them. So please make sure, if that is a case, that you're making the customer the importer of record, that you're making it really clear. And again, it's a little bit trickier with Amazon because Amazon typically want their sellers to be accountable for that import VAT. Okay, so now we're diving into the VAT compliance. What do we need to do from a VAT perspective? So for the registration specifically, the registration processing time with HMRC can take up to 14 weeks. So that's a huge amount of time to be waiting. Unfortunately, that's down to the tax authorities when the registration is sent off. It could come back sooner, it might not, so you have to prepare for that. So we suggest really getting registered or thinking about it far in advance before you kind of started your shipment process and whatnot. That's going to be really important. The UK registration also requires various evidence of proof of trading or intent to trade if you haven't started trading already. So fulfillment contract, screenshots of your Amazon account, merchant tokens, all of these sorts of things are going to help build up a case to the UK tax authorities to say, actually, we have intent to trade or we need a VAT number so that we can start to trade. And so proof of previous sales, that can also work, kind of a catch-22, but it also does help. When you're registering for your UK VAT, you can also register for your UK EORI. They are going to be linked, and then you can use that EORI number to start importing your goods and clearing the goods through customs as well. Once you are registered, you're going to file on a quarterly basis for the most part. There is also an option to file annually, but it can be a little bit more complex with the interim payments. So you're going to declare all of your sales made on a marketplace that are exempt of VAT. They still need to be declared. And you're also going to declare all of the sales made that are subject to VAT. So maybe that these are B2B transactions or sales made through your own website where you've collected the taxes yourself. Those are all going to be going on that quarterly VAT return. And when it comes to reclaiming any input VAT that you may have paid over the last quarter, this could be things like any VAT purchases that you made in the UK or import VAT. This can go on your VAT return to be offset against any sales VAT. Okay, so we've made it through the UK, and we're going to take all that knowledge that we've just applied to the UK and apply it to the EU. And a lot of it is really similar, and you're going to see a lot of recurring themes. But now we just have to take into account that there are 27 different countries within the EU that this can be applied to as well. And they all have their own little nuance to it. So keep that in mind. So let's start out with the fulfillment options in the EU, specifically with Amazon. So we have the merchant fulfillment network. So the merchant is using their own 3PL to fulfill all of their goods across the EU. You have the European fulfillment network, which is where the merchant, you, the seller, can choose which specific countries you want your goods dispatched from to sell across the EU. And then you have pan-EU fulfillment with Amazon, where the merchant can choose specific countries to go on the pan-EU. You import your goods into one Amazon fulfillment center, and then Amazon takes all of those goods, and based on their algorithm, they'll share all the inventory across the different fulfillment centers, and so that the goods can be closer to your end customers. The pan-EU fulfillment, obviously, it's cheaper fulfillment fees. You are getting cheaper shipping costs for your customers because the goods are already located closer to where they are. So there's a lot of benefits to the pan-EU fulfillment, but keep in mind, with all of that, there's going to be some tax obligations as well. So let's get into it. One big tip I wanted to raise as well is once your fulfillment settings are set up, your listings are actually separate to your fulfillment settings. So just because something's happening over here on one side, it doesn't mean that you can't, if you've set your fulfillment settings up, say German only, it doesn't mean that you can't list your products also on the French or Italian marketplaces as well. You can absolutely do so. Just keep that in mind that you can list your products, test different markets, and then maybe once you start to see that different markets are taking off, you can move your stock and inventory into those different countries. So let's look at the marketplace rules within the EU. So first off, marketplaces are going to take on responsibility for specific transactions, just like in the UK, where they're going to be responsible to collect and remit the taxes on behalf of specific types of companies. So the first ones are for goods dispatched within the EU for non-EU sellers. So this is goods dispatched going to any B2C customers by non-EU seller. The second type of transaction is goods dispatched from outside the EU with a consignment value of less than 150 euros. This can go for both EU and non-EU sellers. And then the sellers are going to be responsible in specific cases. So this would be the sales made from an EU-based business that's going to require the EU business to collect and remit the taxes. If there's any transactions being made to a VAT registered business, the seller is going to be responsible for that. And then if any of those transactions are greater than 150 euros in consignment value and coming from outside the EU, much like the UK, Amazon is going to want you, the seller, to become the responsible person for being the importer and declaring the import VAT and taxes. Again, just because maybe Amazon is taking on the responsibility of collecting and remitting the VAT in specific instances does not mean that you as a seller do not have an obligation to be registered. You still may have an obligation to get registered in the local countries where you're fulfilling from to declare specific transactions. So going back to our flowchart of responsibility, it's the exact same flowchart, and we're looking at the underlying supplier, you, the seller, being the person responsible for the B2C supply to the end customer. And then there's going to be two types of transactions on paper, one from the seller to the marketplace, and then the second one from the marketplace to the customer. If you are an EU-based business and you are selling on Amazon, currently you're responsible for all transactions on a marketplace. So this includes B2C transactions and B2B transactions, every single one that you should be collecting the VAT and remitting that. So you're going to need to register in each EU country where you're fulfilling from. You can register for the Union OS scheme in your home country to declare any cross-border B2C transactions. And then also you can collect and remit all of those transactions and report them on the correct VAT returns on a regular basis, depending on the individual country. Now, let's cover off importing into the EU. So similar to the UK, you're going to need a European EORI number. There's no one European EORI number. They are individual for specific countries, but you only need one EU EORI number, and after that you can use that to import across the EU. Non-EU businesses may need an indirect representative, so someone local within the EU who's also jointly responsible to be the importer of the goods. Import VAT is going to be charged based on the value of the goods cleared, along with any duties as well if the consignment value is above 150 euros. And it's going to be reclaimable, much like in the UK. You can reclaim this as long as you're VAT registered, or in specific countries, they have postponed VAT accounting schemes like the Article 23 license in Netherlands, or they do have postponed VAT accounting in France as well. Once you import the goods into the EU and they are cleared, they are in free circulation and can be moved, stored, and sold across the EU. So when we're looking at VAT compliance, as I mentioned, you are going to need VAT registration wherever you're holding your inventory. Now, these VAT registrations can vary depending on the individual tax authority. So registration times can vary depending on the country and how busy they might be. And so they can vary from 2 weeks to 14 weeks with the tax authorities. So keep that in mind. Again, preparing with enough time if you want to enter into a new country, give yourself time for those registrations to take place. Each registration is going to require different documentation. So, for example, Poland requires foreign translations of their registration application. In Spain, you need to notarize and receive an apostille of The Hague for your power of attorney. And most recently in Italy, they require a bank guarantee of 50,000 euros or an insurance cover of a similar value for EU and UK businesses. So you need to take that into consideration into the time of preparing the VAT application as well. Once you're registered, you're also going to get that EU EORI number so you can start to import your goods. Keep in mind that you're going to register in every single country where you're holding your inventory. So when we talked earlier about the pan-EU scheme, you're going to need multiple VAT registrations to cover all the countries where you're holding your stock versus maybe the EFN network where you're maybe choosing one country and you're dispatching all of your goods cross-border. You'll only need one VAT registration from there. Let's look at ongoing compliance in the EU. So once you're registered for the various different VAT registrations, well, you're going to have different filing frequencies, again, depending on the country. So this could be monthly, quarterly, annual. We even have bi-monthly and 4-monthly, depending on the country. So you need to keep on top of these VAT returns and make sure you're filing something for every single return that's due. Once you are VAT registered, you're going to, similarly in the UK, declare the sales made on a marketplace exempt of VAT for those non-EU sellers, and then sales made that are subject to VAT. So again, your own website, the B2B transactions, and anything being imported from outside the EU with a consignment value of greater than 150 euros. Those can all be declared on those local VAT returns. You're also going to be able to reclaim any VAT on the purchases that you may have made within the EU, and as well as your import VAT if you didn't use one of the postponed VAT accounting accounting schemes. So in order to summarize all of this, I wanted to bring it all together with a few case studies, just in case maybe something might relate to you. So first, we have a US-based business, and they're selling into the UK via Amazon fulfillment. They're selling on Amazon and their own website, and the Amazon FBA is fulfilling both types of marketplace and their own website. So when they're importing the goods into the UK and fulfilling from the UK, they're going to trigger a VAT obligation within the UK. They're going to need to start to charge VAT on all the product prices, and Amazon is going to keep the VAT and remit this to HMRC here in the UK for all Amazon sales. For the transactions that happen on their own website, the seller is going to be responsible to declare anything that happens on their own website directly to the tax authorities. The USA business will need to then file a quarterly VAT return and declare any of that VAT collected. If the case that this business, when importing into the UK, they use the postponed VAT accounting, they're going to make sure that they declare this on their local VAT return as well. Let's switch over to a Canadian seller, and they are going to be using Amazon FBA in the Netherlands. They're selling on Amazon and their own website. They're going to be importing goods to the UK and fulfilling also from the Netherlands. They're going to be using a Dutch VAT registration for the sales made from the Netherlands. The Canadian business will need to get a Dutch Union OS registration because any of the sales going across the EU on their B2C or via their own website are going to be declared on that Union OS return. And then they're going to charge VAT on all of their products. So both on the Amazon transactions and the own website transactions. The difference is that Amazon is going to keep that VAT and remit that to the tax authorities for all of their Amazon transactions, and anything made on their own website is going to be the seller's responsibility to pay onwards to the tax authorities in the Netherlands. For the Union OS return for their own website transactions, they are going to charge the local rate of VAT where the end consumer is located. All of that VAT is going to go on one single return, and the Dutch tax authorities are going to be responsible to actually take that money and remit that to the local tax authorities across the EU. We have one final one for an EU seller. So if they're a Lithuanian-based business using Amazon FBA in the Czech Republic, Poland, and France, they only sell on Amazon. So they're going to need to register for VAT in the Czech, Poland, and France. They can register for the Union OS scheme in Lithuania, where they are based and established. They're going to collect and remit VAT on all the transactions made on Amazon. It's going to be their responsibility, and they need to charge where the end consumer is located. The local transactions that happen in France, in Czech, and in Poland, those are all going to be declared on those local VAT returns. And then any cross-border transactions are going to be declared on the Lithuanian Union OS return as well. So there's multiple different returns, and we're just trying to put all of the specific transactions on the correct return for that individual seller. So I know I've covered off a lot, and I hope that this has summarized everything for you when you're starting to sell on the UK and the EU. But if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out here to help at simplyvat.com and let us know that you heard of us through Orange Klik, and then we'll be able to help you get VAT registered and compliant.
It was a lot of information, but very useful one. And luckily, our sellers watching us can revisit the video anytime they need to. So thanks again for providing all the information. And we're going to have the contact of Alex and SimplyVAT in the video description below. So head over to the website, contact them. And if you have any questions about the topics Alex highlighted in this video, then definitely mention that you came from this video, because then they know you are watching us and found this video useful. So thanks again, Alex, for joining me, and I hope to see you soon again.
I hope this video will help you to easier understand how you can expand your Amazon business while staying compliant. And if you want expert help with dealing with the VAT and filing your taxes and tax reports in Europe, you reach out to SimplyVAT team using the link below in the description. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe buttons. And if you have additional comments or questions, leave them in the comments section below. And now I recommend you to watch another video where you will find a complete VAT guide if you want to expand your Amazon business to Germany. So check this out.